Welcome everyone to Capital Factory's second online LatinX Tech In Summit. We are so excited to have you here today. My name is Albert Baez. I'm going to be your MC. Saludos y bienvenidos a todos al LatinX in Tech Summit presentado por Capital Factory. Estamos tan orgullosos y emocionados de tenerlos a todos aquí hoy. Mi nombre es Albert Baez y seré su maestro de ceremonia. I'm excited to be here on the Capital Factory stage as we kick off this awesome day. Big thanks to Accenture, our supporting sponsor. We have an awesome day planned for you guys. And one of my favorite things about technology is the ability to communicate with so many different people from one device. It really brings the world together. So to have the most impact today, to make sure that we all get everything we came for, we ask that you engage and connect with each other. Introduce yourselves in the chat, share your LinkedIn profiles, and make sure to use the stage chat on the right-hand side of your screen. Let's get started, y'all. So excited. We're going to kick things off with an opening statement from the founder and CEO of Capital Factory, Josh Baer. Josh, go ahead, take it away.
Capital Factory is committed to increasing diversity in the entrepreneurial community and making our community a welcoming and inclusive environment. We know that diverse and inclusive teams perform better. The data shows that they're more successful and produce bigger returns. But that's not the way most teams are today. We're starting from a major disadvantage due to hundreds of years of systemic discrimination based on race, gender, physical disabilities, and of course, sexual orientation. Sometimes it's blatant and intentional, but just as often, it's subtle and unconscious. Diverse and equitable teams won't happen unless we are intentional about it. If we don't actively focus on it, we end up with teams that all look the same. That's why we're all doing this. Leaders, entrepreneurs, and allies in tech who support and invest in diversity, equity, and inclusion. Our DEI strategy at Capital Factory has 6 focus areas: women, people of color, Latinos, LGBTQ+, veterans, and accessibility. First, we partner with every other organization we can find who's already doing great work with DEI. Groups like Div Inc., Houston Tillotson University, Opportunity Hub, and Women at Austin. We invite them to use our space, we cross-promote each other's events, and we refer entrepreneurs to each other. We trust them to give entrepreneurs 3-month golden tickets to join our community, get mentorship, and help prepare them to join Capital Factory and raise funding. Second, we host summits designed to celebrate diverse entrepreneurs and talk out in the open about the challenges that they face. This is a great way for us to meet new people who we wouldn't normally and get the message out that our community is open to all. It's also a great way to elevate the profiles of our most successful diverse entrepreneurs so they can serve as role models and inspiration to others. Third, we put up $100,000 investment challenges reserved for teams with diverse founders. This has been an extremely effective way for us to meet new entrepreneurs with amazing companies who we just wouldn't have found before. There's something about putting a $100,000 prize up in the air that pulls people out of the woodwork. Only one company wins the competition, but we always end up meeting other new companies to invest in as well. If you know underrepresented entrepreneurs who should be part of Capital Factory as an entrepreneur, mentor, or investor, please introduce them to us. My email is josh@quityourjob.com, and I'll help make sure that they get pointed in the right direction.
Thank you so much for that introduction, Josh. As Josh said, we host summits like these to celebrate diverse entrepreneurs and talk out in the open about the challenges that they face. Next up, I'd like to introduce Jorge Corral of Accenture. Jorge, come on, join me. There you are. Good morning.
Good morning. How are you?
Oh, I am so blessed. We're alive and well. Got to be grateful for that. How are you?
I'm good. It's good to see you. I'm up here in Dallas, but I'm not far.
I'll be in Dallas next week. Really excited for you guys to be sponsoring us today. I love the motto, let there be change, that you guys speak and live by at Accenture. And so, Jorge, I would love for you to tell us, what does that mean for you? And what does it mean for all of us in LatinX and tech that are attending here today?
Look, thank you for having me. I used to have, you see the Accenture placard? I used to have a let there be change over there, but I took it down. I was getting a little crowded, but I might bring it back up based on that comment. So, hey, look, Thank you. We're at Accenture here. We're all about change. And I just want to say good afternoon to everyone and just welcome everybody to Capital Factory's annual LatinX and Tech Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Summit. And thank you for having me. I'm Jorge Corral. I'm the Dallas office managing director at Accenture. And as a first generation Mexican American, my parents are from Mexico. I'm honored to be part of this LatinX event. It's awesome, and I thank you for the invite. So, and I would just tell you, as a beneficiary of a lot of help and mentoring throughout my career, I'm appreciative of the work Capital Factory is doing to help diverse entrepreneurs. So again, thank you for having me. I'm honored to be here with you again this year as a speaker and sponsor, as well as a partner to Capital Factory, who we partner well with, and who, like Accenture, is committed to increasing diversity and equality in the workplace. I would just reflect on it as just kind of when I thought about this discussion today. There's been a lot of change in our communities, workplaces, and world as a result of the pandemic, and we believe that the need to innovate, transform, and grow in digital, and the digital economy has grown even more important. And so, entrepreneurship, startups, bringing new ideas to the market is super critical for us. And we need people. As part of that, we need people to bring their unique perspectives and skills to the table. And that makes forums like today, where people can share super new ideas and connect in different ways, super important. And the Latino dimension is a great one as well. At Accenture, we hold a key belief that diversity drives innovation. I think we've shared that with you before. We've had good discussions about it. And race and ethnic diversity within our companies is critical to our success. We believe diversity and inclusion and equality really helps us drive innovation because it brings the best new ideas. And if you include new ideas and everybody's unique perspectives in every dimension, it helps drive new solutions into the market. And for us, it's for our clients as well. So it helps, but at the same time, I would just say equality and inclusion has to be non-negotiable. We're committed to lead by example, along with many of the speakers, startups, founders, and participating organizations here today, and across our ecosystem to be better change agents. So we're committed, we Accenture are committed to recruiting, retaining, developing, and advancing racial and ethnically diverse talent, and helping all of those individuals thrive in the workplace. So I would just share with you a little humble brag here. Last September, in the wake of the Black Lives Matter movement and the Pride for Racial Justice, our company set big goals. We announce them, we publicize them, we're proud of them to help us become more inclusive and diverse. And by 2025, we'll increase the representation of Hispanic and Latinx people from 9.5% to 13%, and double the number of Hispanic American and Latinx managing directors by 2025. And for us, managing director is the equivalent of the title of partner. So that's we're committed in general, but also for ourselves to make sure we're holding ourselves accountable to improve. We were recently named Latina Style Magazine's 50 Best Companies for Latinas to Work At, and we're a Society of Hispanic Professional Engineers Star Awards. So I'm going on and on a little bit in answer to your question, but I would should do a shout out to those of us who are joining from our US and Hispanic American ERG groups, who champion programs. And I would just finally say we're proud of our progress, but we don't rest on our laurels. We know there's more that we can do, and we're committed to being drivers of equality and change. So on behalf of Accenture, I'm just excited to welcome everybody on this call to a great day of meaningful and actionable conversations. Let's keep moving forward towards equality, and together I think we can all go further than ever.
That's incredible, Jorge. Thank you so much. Thank you to you. Thank you to Accenture for supporting our LatinX and Tech Summit. If you want to connect with Accenture, please make sure to fill out our post-event survey. And I'm sure they're going to be more than happy to hear from you, as they are actively trying to make a change in the space. Thank you so much. And without further ado, I want to get into our keynote address. Technology enables people and communities to do things they otherwise could not. And our community of Latinx is still not able to do some things that other communities can. And this is why it is so important to support and make way for us in and with technology. So I'd like to introduce today's keynote speaker, John Henry. He's the co-founder and co-CEO of Loop. John Henry is a Dominican-American entrepreneur and investor, Henry has been named to Forbes 30 Under 30, Inc. 30 Under 30, Adweek Creative 100, the Root 100, and Ebony Power 100 lists. He was born and raised in New York City. John's path was a little different. He actually dropped out of college at 18 when he picked up a job as a doorman. He went on to start and sell his first business by the age of 21. Henry later co-founded the venture capital firm Harlem Capital, raising $40 million and making 20 investments in women and minority entrepreneurs before stepping down in 2020. Henry's also passionate about media. He hosted the TV show Hustle on Viceland, executive produced by Alicia Keys and Marcus Samuelson, and produced and hosted branded podcasts for brands like The Washington Post, Gimlet Media, WeWork, eBay, and Samsung. So without further ado, y'all, let's give a huge round of applause and welcome our keynote speaker today, John Henry.
Woo! Yeah, buddy. Man, thanks, man. Crush it, brother. Appreciate you. What's up, y'all? How you doing? It's my first time doing a keynote in this fashion. Shout out to the Capital Factory, Marianne. I see you on there. Sam, Jorge. Shout out to the whole squad behind the scenes. Shout out Josh Bear. Appreciate you. Just had breakfast with Nate Jones. He says what's up. Shout out also to Carly for being an incredible liaison and helping me get situated here in Austin. Albert for emceeing is not an easy role. And then Knives, I see you on the production. And shout out to all the viewers as well. We're gonna have a fantastic discussion. How long do I have? Just so I can, 15, 20? 25, okay, great. That helps me. I can be long-winded, so that helps me get a sense of how long I can run. So what we're going to have is a very contextualized conversation. Also, where should I be looking? Is the main camera right here? I see it there. What's up, guys? So we're gonna have a very contextualized conversation around the reality of the market today. The reality is that the world as we know it obviously has fundamentally shifted in a number of ways. Especially with regards to how different verticals of enterprise all today exist completely in a different norm than they did pre-COVID. But also just after, of course, the killing of George Floyd and the social unrest, I think that set off a domino effect that has felt to me fundamentally different than any of the diversity and inclusion types of efforts that we'd seen in the past. And I think that when the pendulum swings so far in a direction that gets the allocation of capital actually, which of course controls a lot of people who get into office, which of course controls a lot of board of directors, which of course impacts what technologies are made and products and so on. When the shift of capital meaningfully is reallocated in a way that this capital is now being put in the hands of emerging managers, is what it's called in institutional land, i.e. people, non-white, older males that have been, typically the sole allocators of capital. So when the pendulum shifts and we actually hit a critical mass point where money is now shifting, what does that mean for you, for your business, for your customers, for the ventures that you decide to create, for the projects that you're building? If you're a creator, if you're a musician, I've seen all kinds of things just using my plain eyes, observing now all different types of brands that weren't with it before. Now that it's hot and now that it's culturally acceptable and accepted in the zeitgeist to be a little bit more socially woke, all of a sudden we have faces that corporates wouldn't have dreamed of naming the face of their campaigns in a 2016 world. Now, today, are commanding more budget than ever. We're raising more capital than ever. As founders, as fund creators, the reality is that the market today is completely different. I just came from having breakfast with, just now, just like finishing up, coming and arriving here, with probably the premier venture capital fund in all of Silicon Valley, which of course means in the world. And I get chills thinking about it because the premise of the discussion was that people in our communities are not fully grasping just the extent of the power that we actually have. And now here's the thing. When you don't know that you have the power, it affects your confidence walking into a conversation where you're not understanding that you have more leverage than you have. And when you enter a conversation, like a straight up capitalist conversation, and you don't have the leverage, or at least you're not behaving in a way that you don't have the leverage, then it affects the psychology of the conversation. And then the pattern recognition that exists in a lot of these environments where in reality, they're just looking for patterns that indicate to them that, you know, these founders or creators are going to be successful. And it's more than just the metrics, it's the intangibles. We're going to unpack a lot of the intangibles that go into, you know, these spaces where we can start to rebuild equity within our communities in meaningful ways. Now, let me take a step back because I realized I just came in here guns blazing. I have so many things going on, but let me just reset and establish context. I, much like many of you, grew up super humbly, Dominican parents, raised in the hood, Watch the Heights. Shout out to Watch the Heights. If anyone in here, comment if anyone here is from Watch the Heights. Actually, our MC's from Watch the Heights. We just found out that we grew up a few blocks away from each other. And, you know, that's the beginning. But that's also the middle, that's the present, and that's the future in a lot of ways. A lot of what I've been fortunate to be a part of in terms of creating ventures and, you know, I express who I am in this world as an entrepreneur. I fucking love entrepreneurs. We're just like corporate rebels. You know, for me, the reason I was drawn to the entrepreneurship path is because it's someone who understood the capitalist framework, but I feel like entrepreneurs never compromise who they are as an individual. And I loved this idea of blending these two worlds, learning how to slip and slide through the matrix and navigate this corporate landscape while preserving the most individual form of who you are. And I learned early never to compromise who I is, pull up into every space like exactly how I am. And some of the things that I was ashamed of growing up, like for example, my parents never had careers, they had jobs. My mom used to sell super soakers in the park in New York City summers. And my pops was a presser, a dry cleaner, and drove gypsy cabs and stuff like that. That today is the reason why I can speak to you face to face and you can feel that what I'm saying is true and I can resonate as a result of where it is that I come from. And so there's so many experiences that we go through as a community that when we step into this corporate world that historically has only made room for a very homogenous crowd, I've felt like in the last decade, especially in the last decade, as we've stepped up into these spaces, we've been made to feel like we have to compromise a little bit of who we are in the way that we speak, in the way that we dress, in the way that we show up to fit into this corporate environment. But I think that what I've learned is when you can lean into all that you've been through or come from, then you end up being in a uniquely well-equipped position to create music, art, projects, companies that speak to our community. By the way, a large percentage of the things that we consume as a community are made from people that don't come from our community. So, you know, there are brands that are created and acquired by private equity companies and spun up and spun out and then sold. And what I've been privy to over the last number of years, especially, so some of you all know my first business, you know, as a doorman was just hustling dry cleaning. That's the vehicle that I had to me at that time that was presented to me by a resident who worked, who lived where I worked. All I needed was but for one person that came from where I come from to let me know, what fucking excuse do you have? And it shook me to my core, because up until that point, as a doorman, I'm watching people go in and out, and I would say, yeah, but they went to school. See, I dropped out. So yeah, that's why I'm here. Yeah, but you come from X zip code. Yeah, but you had your own room growing up. I never had my own room growing up. So I would literally like play these weird psychological games with myself as to why I could justify at face value why I couldn't be on the other side. Now, I'm saying that, I know a lot of y'all resonate. This is cultural, some of the cultural and psychological debt that we've accrued, because what we're having to undo is generations of trauma that's been passed down and a certain type of thinking that's been passed down. And now you have to calibrate that against the reality that we're in. We're in a reality today where media has been democratized, investing has been democratized, art has been democratized, currencies have been everything's democratized. So now what we have is a lopsided equation whereby we have access to just about anything. And so it really becomes a psychological stepping into the psychology that enables you to lean into that which you've come from and makes you. And that for me happened with, his name was Hugo. When Hugo shook me and was like, yo, what excuse you have? That started my journey. Now, a lot of you are on the very beginnings of your journey now. And a lot of you have a particular vehicle that you're learning to express yourself through. You may have a project, a small business, whatever it is that you're doing. What I learned is that my very first business, I placed so much pressure on that business because I'm reading TechCrunch and Forbes, and I'm seeing that, the media places, tech media, I have some bones to pick with tech media because they'll take the sliver of companies and trajectories that, raise and those companies and trajectories do exist, but they'll focus in on them. And then by virtue of their massive distribution power, they'll perpetuate those stories into the very feeds that we consume on the regular and make us believe that anything less than that is a failure. So what happens when you're assessing your reality of working on your business? And I know that a lot of you listening are like, fuck, that's right. Because I know that you guys tune in on the articles and then compare your progress against that of whom was covered. And I'm also hyper aware that now I've broken through and I'm on the other side and I'm being covered. And as I'm being covered, I'm seeing what's being written about me in real time. I'm realizing that in a way, there's a disconnect between, because I feel like the way in which things are written and captured and disseminated is really not at all, it doesn't represent the full journey and doesn't encapsulate the full journey that one has had to walk to get there. So now, take it all the way back. You're in your first venture. You're learning to navigate. Cool. Don't place all of the weight of the expectations of that you want to do in the world. Don't place it all in that one venture, because then you'll suffocate that venture with the weight of your expectation. You will suffocate what you're working on today with the weight of your expectation, when in reality, you need to just let that thing be and let it teach you what it's meant to teach you. So to put some concrete context on that, my first venture, I learned, was purely meant to get me to develop my confidence in myself and to be able to knock on your fucking door and say, hey, how you doing? My name is John. Boom, door slam. Next one, next one, next one. That's a skill that I developed because of the nature of that first venture. And over the course of your career, wherever it is that you are in your career, you will go through different ventures that will go teaching you things. After that first venture, then I went and I created an incubator in Harlem. And the model was weird. We incubated startups. We didn't take any equity. We also didn't charge any money. And people were like, yo, how are you going to make money? And I was like, don't worry about it, But in reality, I had no fucking clue. But it felt really good. It felt like that was a thing that I needed to be doing. And you're going to work on something that feels like it's what you should be doing, but has no, it might not make any rhyme or reason in the moment. And the pressure will exist for you to put that off to the side and instead do that which brings you more short-term rewards. That could be, and that looks like any number of things. For example, in running this not-for-profit, I ran it for 3-4 years. I was broke I was going through it. And I'm at odds with myself, like, yo, how much longer do I do this? Because I remember, if you look up, this 23-year-old is shaking up, venture or whatever on Fast Company, you'll see an article of me at 23 years old, like boss people around an office. And it was the coolest fucking thing ever. I was like, the most recognition that I had gotten, but I was going through the hardest time I've ever been through at once. So how do you calibrate those realities against each other when you're on the precipice of blowing and you know it, but I couldn't figure out how to commercialize it in the short term. You will go through that. If you're walking a path less traveled, you will go through that. And I had every temptation in the world to say, yo, fuck this, I need to bail. Time to sell e-courses, time to do all that other cheap shit that I know will cheapen my brand equity, but I need to cash in now. Well, if you can withstand the pressure, then I created this, in my head, I had this visual where I realized it's like a slingshot effect. It's like the more pressure you're able to withstand, then when you let go, it's directly reciprocal to how much distance you can cover. Because if you ain't take no pressure, you ain't going nowhere. If it's just something limp. But if you can withstand the pressure, then what it's doing from a market perspective is it's actually building your depth of perspective in something that's completely new. If you're doing something that's new and path less traveled, then you're building a one-of-one point of view in the marketplace that is specifically custom to your experience. And guess what? That doesn't have a lot of commercial application. And that will get you looked over for a lot of things. But when you finally do find a fit in the market that can acknowledge the value of that perspective, you will leapfrog anybody who decided to go with the more lower hanging fruit things for years. Being able to withstand the pressure long enough and be propelled forward is the equivalent of 10 years, maybe 15 years of doing boring ass shit that no one gives a fuck about. Those 3 years of building brand in this peculiar project where no one charged any money or made any, or just it was just a peculiar thing, built my depth of perspective that then presented me with the opportunity to go and cash in tangibly in a number of ways. For example, being asked to go host podcasts for Gimlet Media and WeWork and Samsung. And at the time I was like, well, why would you choose me? Because I'm 23 years old and I don't have that experience. And said, well, you've done interesting shit. Interesting. And I begun to step ever so slightly a little bit more into the power that my viewpoint can have, the commercialization opportunities, and the distinctness of the viewpoint. Interesting. Then later on, that experience at Co-Found Harlem laid the foundation for us to go and start Harlem Capital, which was massively commercially successful. We set out as I believe we're probably the only handful of kids in the country under 30, all Black, and in my case, college dropout, that raise an institutionally backed fund. And oh, by the way, we're investing in the riskiest asset class that exists and in the riskiest sub asset class that exists, which is seed. And we're investing in women and minorities, which are historically the most unproven founders at a time when like diversity and inclusion was just not a fucking thing. So I've asked myself many times, well, how does that happen? How does that happen? And you begin to realize that it starts with what we touched on earliest with what I opened with. It's that our experiences that we come from, that's what can't be replicated. That's what can't be bought. It can't be synthetically replicated in any way. It's who we are. And when we step into these corporate environments, we've been taught to compromise that and dilute it in such a way so that we can exist in harmony. But I've found, and I can say this, I've stood face to face with perhaps some of the world's wealthiest self-made people, shook their hands, and then gotten them to write me a multi-million-dollar check for our fund. And there was a moment when that handshake was made where I felt like a transfer of power. And by the way, millionaires are skeptical people. Decamillionaires also look for reasons why things can't work. Centimillionaires, you start thinking of possibility. Billionaires that became billionaires in one lifetime, from experience, are always rooted in optimism and why things can work, and they see the potential in people. And in actuality, the crazy thing from my own experience is that I felt I had more in common coming from growing up below the poverty line. I had more in common with a billionaire than I did with anybody in between. Really, in terms of the optimism that's required to come from where we come from to get to where we are is the same optimism that takes you all the way. And when we shook hands on that first deal, it was a transfer of power. And it was more than money. It was a psychology that is time. It's our time. And that, by the way, was before 2020. And I get chills thinking about it because it's even more true now. It's even more true. And, what do we go and do with that? What do you go and do with that? And that can be answered in myriad ways. It depends on where you are on your journey. It depends on where you are on your acumen. It depends on where you are with your experience and your connection. Who the fuck knows? Only you can answer for yourself. But I will say, the question persists. What do you go and do with that? This opportunity and this window will compound in influence, but it'll never be as accessible as it is now because we're on the ground floor of it. For me, the way that I chose to, as I mentioned, I'm just a fucking diehard entrepreneur, and that's how I express my activism to the world. But that doesn't have to be how you express your activism. But for me, in seeing, after the killing of George Floyd and seeing those civil unrest, I realized wow, these systems will not passively change ever. They will not passively change. They must be built, and even more onerous, they must be built by us as inexperienced as we are today, as wet behind the ears. It's our generation whom is uniquely well equipped to marry the worlds, the confluence of worlds that we exist in today. Digitally native, culturally relevant, experienced enough. So we're old enough, we're young enough. There are so many factors that are aligning in this moment in time, today, August 19, 2021, that make us literally the perfect candidates to step up and do something big. And as I said earlier, it's the gradual evolution of all that which you'll go through that will make you uniquely well equipped to go out and do exactly what you're going to do next. Maria, for example, Salamanca, who I think will speak in a moment, is at Unshackled VC, that uniquely well equipped to be in that specific seat and invest in founders that are coming from immigrant backgrounds. Who else would have been able to do that shit? Who? She had to walk a very specific path that blended institutional acumen and learning how to navigate those spaces, but also with being a Latina, and merge those two worlds to create the specific thing that she's working on now. And now she's in a seat where she can redistribute the flow of allocation of capital and put it in the hands of people that are bold enough to step up and go take it. That capital will not find you unless you're bold enough to step up and go take it. Tony, whom will also speak in a moment, is also creating something uniquely specific to our community. He's bold enough to go build it. Someone's bold enough to step up in the seat and distribute capital. So the question persists. Markets are completely different. You have macro pressure from the top down, with Netflix committing to bank $100 million in minority-owned banks. Cool. Well, whom are the minority-owned banks? The ones that have been set up, the legacy banks will stand to benefit, but it also leaves room for emerging banks. For example, even on the media side, there are tons of ways now where you can cash in, even at the micro-influencer level. You can catch a bag today for being a micro-influencer with enough presence in Austin, Texas. You can walk away with $2-3 grand a pop per post. Do that a few times a year, and my friends, you have just enabled yourself to slip and slide out of the matrix, leave your job on the side, and make a full-time hustle out of being a creator. Cool. You see what I'm saying? There are so many different ends. There's so many different slivers in the spectrum of the value chain that you can slot into based on where you are today in your journey. I happen to be in a spot now where I believe I have a unique skill set in social storytelling, in the ability to raise capital at scale, and in the fucking chops to go build something difficult. And so what we're doing at Loop is completely vertically integrating and creating a financial services that I learned the other day. It hit me. My business is not selling insurance. My business is restoring trust and equity that our community has in financial services. That's how I'm choosing to step up into today's brand new world. And I think the weight of the question sits with me. How will you go out there and step up and take the power of the context that we've been raising, the cultural capital, and understand that we have the leverage, we have the pricing power, we have the consumer power, and we have the cultural capital to go out there and create brand new systems that nobody else can. That's my time. Thank you all. Cheers. I got it.
That's incredible. My goodness, holy moly. I know we're virtual, y'all, but if you are at home, please get up for a second. Just applaud. I know we can feel it. I know John Henry's going to feel it from there, but I'm going to join you guys in giving him an applause. I am so proud to be standing up here after that, John. Not only do we share the fact that we grew up in Washington Heights, but we're both Dominican Americans. And I'm so happy that you were able to come today and share your thoughts and wisdom with all of us. If you want to connect with John, please do so. If you have questions, I know we have Q&As coming into the chat right now. Please keep sending them in. And then we're going to go ahead and have you join the LinkedIn group, Capital Factory DEI Summit Connections. Please get on there and engage and have those questions for John Henry, and he will make sure to get those answers to you. Oh, man, I'm so excited for what's coming up next. Let's keep things rolling right along and move into our first panel of the day, Building for Latinx and Growing the Workforce. This panel is going to be discussing ways that the tech industry can improve, raise awareness, provide access, and grow Latinx in tech and the entire industry employment rates. I'm going to be your moderator, and I'm going to welcome to the stage Maria Salamanca, partner at Unshackled VC. Hello, Maria. I'm also going to welcome Tony Aguilar, CEO of Chipper, to the stage, and Yesenia Reyes, executive leader at Accenture. There she is. Amazing. Hello, y'all. How are you guys doing? Let's go in order. Maria, how are you? Thank you for joining us.
Great. I'm excited to be here.
Do you got some chills? I got some chills. It was awesome.
Thank you for having me.
Tony, how are you? Welcome, brother.
I'm doing awesome, man. I miss y'all. I wish I could be there with y'all, giving hugs and seeing everybody in person. But soon we will do that.
I'm so happy to see you. So happy you're healthy and you're looking great, looking sharp.
Thank you.
Hello, Yesenia. How are you?
I am
Welcome.
wonderful. How are you? I'm feeling the energy. Wow, what a powerful snippet that I caught from that last piece.
I know, John was great. Loved it. Loved the shout out.
Oh, that's awesome. Well, I'm so happy to be moderating this panel with you guys today. This is something that's really near and dear to my heart. As we build our own media tech company with Blended Sense, it's so important to us to not just, bring in diverse teammates, but also everything that we're doing at Blended Sense, build it for our community, right? Make it accessible to Spanish-speaking communities and the Latinx community across the world. And that's what I really want to talk with you guys about today. So I have three main questions that I want to go ahead and hit home, and we'll go popcorn style and go around the horn, as they say in baseball. The first one is, how do we get more Latinx founders funded? Right, we heard John go through so many different stats and talk about the journey that we've been on, and also talk about the window that we have right now, which is, we do have access for the first time. And what does that look like, right? How do we get more Latinx founders funded? The second question is, how do we develop the Latinx workforce in technology, right? If we're going to get all this capital for Latinx founders, how do then we make sure that the supply chain and the workforce is ready and equipped to go help us build, right? And then lastly, which I think brings everything home, is how do we start to support Latinx communities in and with technology? We have all these amazing solutions that are built here in Austin and Silicon Valley and across the world. How many of those are built with the Spanish-speaking community in mind first as the primary market, right? Not the secondary. So let's start off. We're going to go with you, Maria, first to tackle the first question of today's panel. How do we get more Latinx founders funded?
Yeah, I mean, I work in venture capital, so I think there's one question that's a very kind of systematic institutional question of we need more folks at the LP level, right? So it's individuals who are investing in venture capital funds. That means we need more of us Latinos in endowments and pension funds, kind of managing that money for folks, because they're the ones making the calls on what venture capital funds get money and what not, and what managers to put money behind. And ultimately, these managers, aka VCs, get to decide what entrepreneurs get money. And so I think it's a full stack solution of we need to have more Latinos in positions of making those decisions, both at the LP institutional capital side, at the venture side, and I think entrepreneurs, just where they are in the stack of capital, end up kind of being the last one to feel that impact, but it's slowly happening. And I think a lot of it also comes, if you think about it, I think I saw this tweet earlier today that was really resonated with me, and it was, Silicon Valley, if you think about it, why it was successful, ultimately, Silicon Valley was a mindset. It was a mindset that, yes, it had a geographic location of the day, but ultimately Silicon Valley as a mindset meant you pay it forward. Everyone is hustling. No one has yet proven themselves, and they all kind of built together, and they built in kind of cohorts and peers. Obviously, many of them became successful. They knew that there would be more people behind them. They would be angel investors. They would build more companies, and it just became kind of this ecosystem where everyone won together. And ultimately, that's the question of how do we build that mindset for our ecosystem, for our community, of giving back, of supporting, of sharing knowledge, because ultimately building companies is really hard, and having an ability to share the wins and the losses and their learnings is really key. That transfer of information is what is needle moving for an ecosystem.
Oh, absolutely. You nailed that. Here's an idea. I would love to hear from you, Tony. You know, you're in the fintech world, right? You've been in that world your whole life. And I find, you coming from New York, a lot of the people I graduated high school and college with, Dominicans, Cubans, Puerto Ricans, they all go into the financial industry, but it's all banking, right? How do we hey, let's come into the VC world, right? And learn this. But we'd love to hear your thoughts, Tony.
Yeah, well, one of the things that and I'm hearing an echo. Does anybody else hear that? Or is it just me? I'm hearing okay, let me keep going. All right, I think we're good now. Yeah, so Maria mentioned a lot of stuff that needs to happen on the LP or the investor side, which is key, right? It's you need investors that are going to want to understand problems that a lot of Latino founders are trying to solve, right? That's typically, when I'm talking about the student loan problem to some of these VCs, they've never had student loans. They don't know what it's like to have to finance their college. And so there's a lot of education that needs to happen. So it's hard for them to get conviction behind what I'm building, because there's such a gap there in the problem that I'm trying to solve. Looking at it from a founder perspective of building, a startup, one of the biggest things I've learned as an entrepreneur is that you can't do this alone. It's too difficult. It's too hard. There's a lot of things that you need around you, like a support system, even just for your mental health, you need people around you. And I feel I'm really jealous right now of the Black community and what they've done in the last 2 years, just seeing how the Black community has, from a founder and investor perspective, how cohesive and, connected I feel the entire Black founder group is. And I'm not seeing that with the Latino community, right? And I feel that's one of the biggest gaps that we have. So, getting the connections, having access to the network, but also building the skills and everything that you need to build a company, I feel that's one of the biggest gaps right now. And so, if we can pay attention on how, what are those gaps, and then what are the organizations or methods of helping develop entrepreneurs, I feel that's something we need to focus on over the next couple of years.
Absolutely. Yesenia.
I love how we started, right? Because Maria started with mindset and Tony started with skills. And as in my role, right, at a technology consulting, right, kind of end-to-end company like Accenture is, I'm looking at it from both sides of the table, right? What do we need inside our institutions, and then what do we need the public to drive, right, in terms of of changed expectations, right, of accountability, of transparency. And so I'm going to come back to that mindset framework, right, on two sides. I think as a Latino community, we need to create the mindset of creative, ideation, fail fast, right? We often act in safety because it's just where we are, right, in our history. And so I think if we started in our, at a younger age to be talking about, ideas and problem solving, right? Really getting our children and our families, right, even in our communities and our families, to be talking about what problem do we see and what ideas do we have, that builds confidence, right? Because in all of this ecosystem, it's, the person with the most competence and confidence gets the funding, right? So we have to start in that, growing that skill set, right? From ideation all the way through the pitch. The other thing that Tony said that I really liked was the network, right? We're typically very heads down, right? Our network is immediately around us. We have got to be the people that are reaching out through, all of the social media, methods, and not being shy about asking for, 20 minutes of someone's time to create the network, to nurture the network, to grow the network. Because other communities, spend time in their networks, right? There's just, let's face it, right? Institutional, kind of challenges, right, to all of this. But we ourselves have to change our mindset and our behavior, and we have to get the skills, right? To show that that we are competent and confident.
Yeah, to piggyback a little bit off that, what Yesenia said was, finding the problems that we need to solve within our community, right? Like that's really what an entrepreneur is at the end of the day. That's what a company is. You see a problem, you go solve it, right? And is that market, is that problem big enough where you can actually build a business? But I feel like one of the biggest shifts that at least I hope to see, and if we can get this implemented more in the schools at an earlier age, is showing that there's tools and resources that you can actually go build the stuff now, right? Like I feel like the no code revolution that's happening right now is going to be a huge opportunity for the younger Latinos to start building their own pieces of technology, their own apps, their own platforms to solve the problems that they're facing day in and day out. And you don't have to go to school, and learn, comp sci or learn how to code. You can use Bubble and some of these other platforms to start getting these MVPs and other solutions out. But the key though is to show that this stuff exists, right? So can we get this into the schools and start to push it? Hey, let's go make a simple app, right? Like Latinos, we over-index on using technology and using apps and using tablets, but we're consuming a lot of videos and things like that. But let's, can we shift that to actually doing stuff that's a little more productive? Getting more educated on technologies that are out there.
Absolutely. John Henry touched on it earlier with the window of access right now and how we need to show up ourselves, right? And a lot of, like you said, Yesenia, there's a deep social, psychological, and cultural challenge. My parents are both immigrants from Dominican Republic. For me, my brother, and my sister, it was all about conservative safety, step by step. How do you assure that you're going to be good and taken care of in life? Not about taking risks, right? And in order to make an impact in technology and really assert ourselves in technology, we have to start taking risks. And we got to be confident in those risks so we can build on that. So there's so many layers to this. And I'm just so honored to be here having this conversation with you guys, because I think that's where it starts. So let's move down the line here to the next part of the question. And, how do we develop the LatinX workforce in technology? I think you touched on it, Tony. But let's start with you, Yesenia. How do we, once we get people confident and aware of the tools and they want to make the jump, how do we actually foster that and empower more Latinos to make a jump into the industry?
Well, again, I'm going to come back to creating a community that opens a door, right? It's one of the things that, that we are, we're challenged, and yet it's also shifting, right? Is the ability to get more Latinos represented, right? In across the spectrum of technology, across the spectrum, of business, and moving them up, in the organization so that they are decision makers. And I think that we, again, it's about, when we make it through the door, it's to keep our foot in it and continue to bring, right, our brothers and sisters, with us on that journey. And again, I'm going to come back to the network, right? It is hard to be in corporate sector. It's hard to be in the technology sector, right? So we've got to, we have to just ask for help when we need it. We need to, look for those coaches and mentors that can help us navigate those hard times, right? Because let's not kid ourselves. It is hard to be the only person in the room, for sometimes years on end. But, so continuous conversation, collaboration, and then raising your hand to take that challenge, right? Raising your hand to say, I want to develop, whatever it is, right? Again, what problem do we need to solve? And, how can I use my leadership skills, right, to move in that direction? And so I'm going to come back to the point of the question, which was workforce skills. And while we all need to develop, the technology skills, I don't want us to forget that part of problem solving, again, comes back to creativity, communication, collaboration, right? Because once you have an idea of how you want to solve a problem, you have to get a lot of stakeholders aligned, right, to keep the ball rolling. So again, it comes back to lifting outside of the way our culture has shaped us, which is, we need to honor it. It's good, right? It has its place in our history and in our world today. But we've got to step out of the ways that we traditionally show up at work. We have got to be the ones that speak up. We have got to be the ones that, that demand transparency. We have got to be the ones who open the door for others and not let them, kind of languish, right? In a moment of struggle or in a moment of uncertainty.
I love that. I know, Maria, you have to head out. I know you had a prior engagement. Thank you so much for being here with us today. I want to ask you, leave the audience as we do take the Q&A. As someone in VC, we talk about how do we build, we support in and with technology. I see so much opportunity in any industry in technology, right? FinTech, EdTech, et cetera, to build for the Spanish-speaking Latinx community as the primary market. Are you seeing a shift in VC where people are focusing there and then expanding?
I think we're starting to see a lot more of the understanding of how much of a force the Latino community is. I think it starts with entertainment, it starts with media. I think that's where you're starting a lot of what you're seeing. But I think ultimately Latinos are big cultural leaders, and we are entering a part in tech when, there's going to be a new consumer social sphere, right? The Facebooks of the world are dying. The last really good social media was the Snapchat. It has been almost 10 years since that. We're going to see a new wave, and ultimately it is folks of color who lead culture, have always led culture. And it's a great opportunity for us to lean into that and build something great here. I do have to hop, but it was a pleasure being here. Thank you so much. And you guys are in great hands with Tony and Yesenia.
Thank you, Maria. Have a wonderful day. Tony, you want to pick up on that? Building in and with technology.
Sorry, can you say that one more time?
Yeah, how do we start to support the Latinx communities to not just in technology, right, but with technology? How do we build business models? Is it smart to build business models focused on the primary market being Spanish-speaking and Latinx communities? Are we seeing a shift there? And the reason that question comes to me is because I've been a part of 3 startups that all have phenomenal tools, but the moment a Spanish speaker called us, we couldn't service them. Right. And we're 4.4 million Spanish speaking businesses in the US alone. And so, that's a massive gap, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, I was actually talking to an investor about this yesterday where, again, Latinos, we over-index on using smartphones, using technology. But then when you look at how we participate in the actual the actual consumer side, the economic side, right? Are we purchasing? Are we buying as much as the percentage that we are spending money on e-commerce, on some of these other platforms online is it's nominal compared to the amount of time that we're spending on there, right? And so if we're spending most of our time viewing media, at the end of the day, Facebook, YouTube, if you're not making purchases, you're the product at the end of the day, right? And so it's how do we use technology and start to build for for the people that need it, right? We're not seeing that happen. I don't know any other companies in Austin that are focused on building for the Spanish demographic, right? So it does seem like there's a huge gap right now.
Tony, I love, if I may, I love that because one of the barriers to building for the Hispanic market is that the Hispanic market is often talked about as a monolith. Right,
yeah.
And we've got to start to deconstruct this because just in getting ready, for this conversation, Forbes is talking about, the Harvard Business Review, Fast Company, they're all talking about, kind of the hypercultural Latinx group, right? It is a very young group. It is a buying power of its own that we, as business people, right? Again, on the spectrum from whether we're delivering services or being the high entrepreneurs and venture capitalists, we've got to start to study, right? And engage with the needs of a very diverse community within what we call, right? The Hispanic community, the Latinx community, right? There are age ranges, there are consumer behaviors, there is buying power that needs to be recognized. And and I think right now, especially, we just had the census data come out. Right, and everyone's doing research on it because it's the first time, right? Where our non-white population is larger, right? Kind of in this country. That means something, right? And if organizations, if individuals, if creative people aren't wrestling with the data, we are going to be lagging, right? Kind of on the opportunity.
Absolutely. I love that. Reminder, y'all, if you have any questions, please join the LinkedIn group, DEI Capital Factory, and have your questions in there. We would love to connect and have those answered. Any last remarks, closing remarks? Tony, we'll start with you, and then we'll end with you, Yesenia.
I mean, I feel like this is a conversation that we've been having for the last couple of years, and there's more. You know, I'm glad that we're still talking about this. One of the things that I really want to push, like everybody in our community, especially here in Austin, is if you're in tech, the one thing to open a kid's eyes to wanting to go into tech is to see somebody else that's doing it, right? One of the most impactful things that I've ever done was work for Startup Superstars with the Hispanic Chamber here, bringing those kids from the Title I schools that are like a mile away, you know, from downtown, bringing them to Capital Factory, bringing them to Google, to Facebook, and showing them that, hey, you could work at a place like this, and showing them all the different facets of technology, of, you know, developer, designer, like whatever it is. Those kids don't know that there's all these, you know, careers that they can go into. So giving them access and awareness to that. So I urge everybody to like reach out to the community and do your part in, you know, getting the younger generation involved.
And it's not hard, Tony. I mean, you and I both know this, right? Like, they're anxious.
It's the most fulfilling thing. It's the most fulfilling thing you could do, just to see their eyes light up, and it could shift their entire life. So I really, really urge you guys to go do that.
Man, I think that is such sound advice and so tangible in a real way that we can make a difference. So everybody out there, if you are a founder, an executive at a tech company, and you're maybe at the ground level or you're huge, just go reach out, bring some kids in, have a day. You know, I bet it'll do you some good and maybe fire you up.
And then maybe they'll hire you, you know, once they build their company, you know?
I love it. Yesenia, your closing remarks, please.
Oh, thank you. One, just again, thank you for moderating us, and the Capital Factory for hosting us. This is such a, you know, it's such a meaningful conversation. You know, mine is the call to action, right? You know, it's like, and I put myself in this call to action, is those of us that have a little more opportunity now to be the people that back others. You know, we've got to do that. We have got to step out in faith that this investment in our, you know, in our community will yield benefits that are social, that are cultural, that are economic, right? We have to be the money behind, right? You know, kind of all this creativity. And we have got to heighten the conversation and the urgency with changing that mindset in our families, in our parents who are still very cautious, right? We have got to have conversations about this so that kids aren't limited to the safe, you know, kinds of careers, right? You know, that we are, you know, that as a culture, we become more risk takers and thereby able to reap those rewards.
I couldn't agree more. If we're here today, Yesenia, you, myself, Tony, John, everybody else is going to join us. We've made it against all odds, right? And it's our responsibility. I think if we can own that and say it is our responsibility to go back and help move it all forward, I think we're going to be quite all right. But it has been an absolute pleasure to be here with y'all today. Tony, Yesenia, thank you so much for joining me. And I wish you all the best. And yeah, have a wonderful day.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Have a good one. Oh, man, this has been an awesome day. Moving on to our final panel of the day, there is a generation of immigrants who have lived in the U.S. since childhood and only know this country as home. Yet, current immigration laws and policies do not offer them a feasible opportunity to obtain citizenship. This panel is going to discuss various new tools and forms of allyship that assist dreamers in tech to navigate fundraising and barriers, while also discussing the long-term effects of harsh, confusing, anti-immigration policy that exists in this country today. We're so excited to delve into this discussion. Moderating this panel is Eugene Sepulveda, CEO of the Entrepreneurs Foundation. We also welcome Lisa Woodson, Chief People Officer of Code 42, and U.S. Congressman Joaquin Castro. There you are.
Perfect.
Awesome.
Hey, Albert.
Thank you guys
Welcome.
so much for being here today. Thank you, Eugene, Lisa, and Joaquin. I'll leave you guys to it. Have a wonderful discussion.
Cool. Thanks. What a great tech summit this has been already. Albert's doing a great job as our MC and going beyond the MC. I mean, he's lived the life. John Henry was an excellent keynote. Loved Maria, Jasmine, and Tony in the last session, and Lisa and Congressman Castro, thank you so much for this next panel. Just to introduce the audience, in case you are new to the region, perhaps, if you don't know Congressman Joaquin Castro, you might get confused. He looks like the former secretary of HUD Castro, who's his twin brother. Joaquin's the better looking one.
Yes.
And
Thank you, Eugene. Thank you.
I'm assuming that Julian's not watching. So Congressman Castro has been in Congress representing the 20th district based out of San Antonio since 2013, right, Joaquin?
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, and you're chair of the Hispanic Caucus.
Yeah, I just completed my chair this past January, but I was chair.
Okay. So you were chair. Are you still permanent select committee on intelligence,
Mm-hmm.
foreign affairs, and education and labor?
Right.
Fantastic. So I imagine the congressman is exceedingly busy at the moment. So thank you for taking the time to be with us. Lisa Woodson, who we have mutual friends who speak really highly of you. And we're like, when I would call them, they said, no, you got to get Lisa, who's kind of in the trenches on this. I take it from what other people have said that you've got a passion for this topic. I know that you're the CHRO for Code 42 and have been playing in the space for quite a long time. So
yeah,
thank
you for having me.
Absolutely. Well, let's dive into this. We want to talk about dreamers, but we want to also talk about immigration. And Joaquin, if we can start with you, what's the status of DACA and immigration reform, and where do we find ourselves?
Well, that's a great question, given all this time that the issue has been percolating. But Eugene and everybody at the Capital Factory, thank you for putting this on. And Lisa, it's great to be with you for this discussion as well. Well, we are actually at what could be a very historic moment for the country to finally achieve comprehensive immigration reform. And that's through the budget reconciliation process that will go through the Senate and the House in the next few months. And this may be an opportunity for us to actually finally get this bill done. I tell people that the latest iteration or movement for comprehensive immigration reform, including for Dreamers, was actually, I think, kicked off by Dreamers in about 2006. And in 2013, 2014, the Congress had a chance to pass a bill through the House that the Senate had already passed to achieve comprehensive immigration reform. And that didn't happen. The Speaker of the House at the time, if you all remember, John Boehner, decided not to put the bill on the House floor for a vote, even though it probably had the votes to pass. And so here we are still 7 years after that and still trying to get immigration reform done. But this may actually be a chance to do it. It looks like there are enough Senate Democrats, in other words, what would be 51 Senate Democrats, to support immigration through reconciliation. But the hitch is that the Senate parliamentarian has to give the okay that immigration reform can be put into this budget bill. And so that's where we are right now, is basically, we're in that process, and the next few months will be very telling about whether we're actually able to do it.
And the other important part for techs are H-1B visas. So where were we and where will we be with those?
Well, it's interesting. For years, the quote unquote battle over immigration was mostly politicians attacking undocumented immigrants. But if you notice, during the Trump administration, over those 4 years, the preceding 4 years, not only were folks going after undocumented immigrants, but they increasingly started going after legal documented immigrants, and specifically visa holders. And so one of the things that this bill would do, in addition to giving Dreamers and DACA holders a path to citizenship, is it would also expand the number of visas, including H-1B visas as well.
Fantastic. Hey, so Lisa, you guys are hiring all over the world and from around the world. What's your experience with Dreamers in the tech industry, with immigrants from other countries coming into the United States to work?
So I think it is two separate ways to look at it. So you just mentioned DACA as well as H-1B visas. So the first thing that I would say is, when it relates to DACA, there's a lot of confusion, especially in early startup tech companies where you don't necessarily have large HR teams that are well-versed. in the law. And so there's a lot of confusion in thinking that DACA actually requires sponsorship as an H-1B visa would, which it does not, right? So the difference would be, obviously, you have DACA, which is the work permit, which allows you to get a job just like I have my job today, versus the H-1B that requires a pretty lengthy and, quite frankly, can be a costly process for companies. So I've done both. And I think it's really important to, as we look at hopefully the legislation that's going to go through that would expand the use of H-1B visas, it's still important that we focus on DACA and really bringing diverse representation into our organizations for where we sit today. So as we're waiting for new legislation, we still have the opportunity as it sits right now today to go out and be hiring dreamers.
And H-1B visas important to your business or not?
So I think, yes, all of it's important. So if you think about the tech space, right? So look at Fortune 500 companies, look at a lot of the founders. You see a lot of those companies where the founders were either immigrants or children of immigrants. So when we're talking about innovation, the ability to compete, talent matters. And we should absolutely be looking to expand access to get the best talent to be able to drive our business.
You know, that you bring that point, and let's drive it home. You know, even if we could find all the talent we needed domestically, we wouldn't want to. I mean, we know the value of diversity of teams, and that includes geographic and cultural diversity. Absolutely. So while we may have offices around the world, our teams in this country need that diversity of thought and experience.
You know, it's such an interesting point. It's one of those things where the previous panel was talking about, hey, leverage the data. So when you look at the data, the story is a pretty clear one. You see a lot of the larger tech companies, you know, really speaking out. It's good for business. It's good for our economy. Look at the number of even DACA recipients today. So we have 500,000 individuals who are in colleges. When I start thinking about, you know, internship programs, early career, and really building those career paths, it's so much opportunity. We just have to be smart and go after it and make it a reality.
Well, and to Lisa's point, Eugene, you know, even the Congress, right? DACA, of course, was started as an executive order by President Obama, and fortunately has survived over the years. But it took Congress even a few years to make a final decision that we could hire, you know, DACA holders, basically. And so it's not a surprise for me to hear that a lot of the tech companies still wrestle with that, with not knowing or not understanding, hey, we can actually employ these folks and they have the opportunity to work in our company.
So, yeah, no, exactly. Joaquin, what are other, I mean, the depth and breadth of the committees that you sit on? I mean, I'm thinking education, I'm thinking labor, thinking foreign intelligence. What are the macro issues of welcoming and bringing in, you know, foreign citizens to work, to become part of, you know, the American economic society? Are there broader considerations?
Yeah, you know, I try to take a kind of a historical context and look at it. And the United States is perhaps more than any other nation. I know there are other nations where you have a rich history of immigration, but certainly the United States is a country that has been blessed that over the years, people from all over the world have wanted to come here and work hard and be part of American society. And that has been to our benefit. Right. And so the discussion over the last few years really had troubled me because there was this real movement towards really shutting our doors. And again, not just to folks like dreamers, but even to H-1B visa holders, right? And when you do that, essentially you're telling some of the brightest people in the world, the most able people in the world, that you're no longer open for them to come here and use their talents and benefit themselves, but also benefit the United States of America. You know, so as I look at these issues, I think that we have to remain a country that is blessed by people who really want to come here from all over the world. But certainly, I mean, it's got implications for everything, for our workforce. Our birth rate as a nation has declined over the generations. So we want to make sure part of the reason that you allow folks into a country is so that you have a very healthy and robust workforce. I'm co-chair of the U.S.-Japan caucus, for example. Japan is a wonderful country, has the third largest economy in the world right now, but its workforce is also shrinking because its birth rate is fairly anemic. And so that's a position that you don't want to be in. And immigration is a healthy way that you can make sure that your workforce remains young and remains strong.
Lisa, anything to add to that?
You know, I was just thinking, I'm typically not someone who likes labels, but when I think of the term of dreamer, it's such a great label, because I think it's not just about getting the talent and the innovation. There is so much that comes to what you're adding in terms of cultural difference, but really just the perseverance. So what you have to go through to be a dreamer, and then how you bring that pride, that work ethic, that commitment into organizations, it really adds value. So again, beyond just the tangible, what's the technical skill set, there's more to it than that. I think we should embrace that as well.
And I absolutely agree, Eugene. On that, I just wanted to say, we get into this debate in Congress also about who should be allowed into the country. Mm-hmm. And look, it's wonderful. I think it's incredibly wonderful if you have 1 million brain surgeons or even, computer science graduates that want to come to the United States. But we also have to remember that people make themselves here in the United States. In other words, the country didn't get to where it is by cherry picking just the best people from around the world. Generationally, people succeeded here and become, who they want to become, and become some of the hardest working and brightest people in the world here.
Well, the data suggests that, immigrants have a better track record than the rest of us at, climbing the curve. I had an epiphany the other day, and it's occurring to me how this could be extrapolating. I've always told, Joaquin knows this. I have 13 godchildren, 6 nieces and nephews. It's like, my own high school. And I always tell them, look, marry the person that's going to help you become the person you want to be, that you want to be your, the mother or father for your children. And third, that you can help them become who they want to be. And I was interviewing for a position the other day, and both fantastic women. I was like, how the hell am I going to make the decision between this? And I thought, wow, who could we be the best for? So both super qualified, ready to go. I know they're going to have a lot of growth and success, but the Entrepreneurs Foundation and Culturati will help which one become realize their dreams. And I think we have moved into an age with the bond between, the understanding between workplaces and team members, that we are going to be good for each other, and that we are going to help, Lisa, if you come work for me, I'm going to help realize your dreams. I'm going to help, climb all of Maslow's hierarchy. And when I think of that as a country or a major employer, wow, there's so many opportunities. And why would, anyway, I won't go into my crystal thing. Hey, what are some organizations we can join, or practices we can deploy to be more helpful to DACA recipients and immigrants who want to work in the United States?
Do you want me to start, or?
Please. Yes.
Okay. So I think the first piece for me is about education advocacy. And when I talk about education, it's actually to people team. So if you think about, at the end of the day, I always tell leaders, I don't make hiring decisions unless it's for the people team. But what I am responsible for, is a talent acquisition team who's out in the environment sourcing and trying to find the best talent. And so how do you start to think differently about non-traditional ways of sourcing? Where do you get to go, whether it's looking at not just kind of top tier schools, maybe you're looking at vocational programs, maybe you're looking at junior colleges, but how do you start to go and meet people where they are to start to create a pipeline of talent that is diverse and doesn't just look like the majority, quite frankly. And so that to me is absolutely where you must start, because if you don't have that pipeline, then in your organization, you aren't going to make a difference in terms of, who you're hiring. So that's number one. I think the second thing too is about being really intentional in terms of your initiatives. And so again, if I think about DACA recipients and just the sheer number that are in college today, internships to me and mentorship become really, really important. And so in the previous panel, there was some conversation about showing people the possibilities, right? And so if you think about someone who is in college and trying to make a decision about, where can my career take me? If you're bringing those individuals into internships and you're introducing them to technology and the different opportunities that exist, you start creating, I think, different ways of thinking, and both for the individual as well as for hiring managers in the business to start to see, hey, this can work, this can be a good fit for our culture. So those are two places I think are really important to start.
Well, Georgina, I'm assuming that covers your question. I have a question from a participant here, and I think you just nailed it, Lisa. Thank you. Joaquin, other points?
I would just add to that because I think we haven't covered it yet. But, most major American industries are still not representative of the full face of America, right. Including, for example, Dreamers and others, but the full Latinx community, for example. And so I hope, in fact, before I did the panel, I went back and looked at the specific numbers for the industry. And I think Latinos, for example, make up less than 8% of the tech industry, even though the population is now almost 19% of our nation's population. So there is a lot of work for the tech industry to do to actually, be more reflective of the U.S. population. And I've done a lot of that work in the last 2.5 years or so in different forms of American media, although not directly much in the tech industry. But I hope that there will be, of course, more conversations like this, but action plans by major companies and mid-sized companies and others to actually improve those numbers.
So, I did leave out part of Georgina's question. And Joaquin, this is right up your alley. What can we do to expand access to the education needed so that, members of the Latino community can more fully participate?
Well, I think a few things. In terms of the workforce itself, I hope that in Congress there will be some kind of student loan forgiveness. There's been a debate about how much, whether it should be $30,000 or $50,000 or a lower amount. I hope that we're going to see something in the coming months. The president extended the student loan payment moratorium until the end of January, I believe, of next year. But the reason I say that is because you have a lot of Latinos and really other Americans, young Americans, who are so burdened by student debt that it affects the kinds of jobs that can take on, including internships that don't usually pay very much. And as we know, internships are usually the first way that you get your foot in the door. People check out your skills as an employee, and then they often will offer you a permanent job. But if you can't even afford to get your foot in the door, then it becomes a lot harder to compete for permanent jobs. And so that's one piece. That's the after piece, after people have graduated. The before piece is that we've got to do a lot better job of making college more affordable. And so I've supported throughout my time in the legislature and then Congress, increasing Pell Grants, for example, and student loans. But so we've got to see a lot more of that from the Congress. And then finally, just do a better job of directing more students onto college, including into the different tech fields. Which over the years in our high schools, I don't think that we focused on that enough. One of the few organizations that I stayed on as part of when I joined Congress was the College Advising Corps that basically acts as a supplement to high school guidance counselors. And all it does is try to work with students to get them to go into higher education after high school.
Thank you. I want to add, so we have an example in Austin, a company called WP Engine, founded by my good friend Jason Cohen, and the CEO is another dear friend, Heather Bruner. Last I heard, about a third of their workforce was non-college grads. They have created their own pipeline in their own training and development infrastructure to bring forward, non-college educated. Some will have some will have associate's degrees, but others won't. And, they then work really hard to supplement their existing education so that they will be able to, to pursue a professional development program that's unencumbered. And I think you got to see more of not only tech America, but corporate America adopt these kinds of programs to level the playing field.
I just want to add to that because you just hit on something that I think is just absolutely critical. I think traditionally, when you think about an entry-level role, so whether it be tech industry or not, oftentimes if you look at the job descriptions that start with, a 4-year degree, 3 years of this, 5 years of that, really taking a step back to ask the question, what are the specific skills and behavioral traits that you need to do the work? And how can we move away from making everything be education-based? Because there are a ton of people, whether they're dreamers or not, who have an extreme amount of potential, but they never get to realize it because there are so many barriers to entry. And so I think organizations really being thoughtful and being clear on what are the actual requirements. So maybe there are 5 things that we really want, but what are the 2 actual must-haves, and kind of reducing that barrier so that people can actually get their foot in the door and demonstrate what they're capable of.
Excellent point. Thank you, Lisa. Hey, we have another question from Ali Garcia. Most immigrants lack the education, resources, and funded needed to start an innovative business because that requires the privilege to trial, fail, and try again. What can we do to support them better from a fundraising perspective and from a community perspective? I have some thoughts on this as well, but what about you guys?
Well, that's a great question. So I don't think in this country we actually do a very good job on this. And let me give you examples. And I'm going to speak about the Latino community. Because the question was about immigrants. There are industries where Latino immigrants dominate as workers. In other words, they're a large percentage of the workforce. In other words, so for example, the agricultural industry, the construction industry, the hospitality industry. If you go out in August in Texas and you look at a lot of the folks that are working on a roof in Texas in August, a lot of those folks tend to be Latinos. Many of them are immigrants. What we don't do a good job of in this country is helping people move from worker to entrepreneur and owner. And there's a real challenge. I think it's a perfect challenge for people in tech, right? People that want to help transform people's lives and go and work with people who have the skills and know the operational set of what's going on at a job, but they just aren't the owners. So there's a lot of potential to take immigrants who are out there working in different industries and turn them from worker to owner. And I tell people that there's about 3 things I would love to do if I wasn't in politics. And that's one of them, is actually working on moving people from workers to owners like that.
Joaquin, we're going to talk about that more. And look, let me say, there's a move underway right now about friends and family and, as seed capital, and that's discouraging to some who don't have friends and family with other capital to invest. But there are increasingly organizations. Number one, people should know institutional investors are dying to find entrepreneurs of color with ventures to put money into right now. And you ought to get connected with an accelerator or an incubator. There's Capital Factory, of course, and I'm biased. There's Div Inc., which is really, really good in Austin. And then we have these community development financial institutions like People Fund that do a little bit more what Joaquin is talking about, which is are ostensibly to loan money to women and entrepreneurs of color that are creating jobs in low to moderate income communities. But, I happen to be involved with the launch of this one 26 years ago now. After about 10 years, we learned that the intellectual capital was more important than the financial capital, or at least as important. That when you didn't grow up with marketers and lawyers and accountants and other entrepreneurs, you were at a great intellectual disadvantage. Now you may have, this natural compulsion to get out there and make something work, but in order to scale, so you can employ more people. We brought intellectual capital as well as financial capital. And I think we've got to look at that model for disadvantage for men and women who grew up in low to moderate income families. I think our time is up, and really want to thank you guys. Any closing remarks from you, Lisa?
I'll just start with thank you so much for having me. At the end of the day, I guess I have a call to action specifically for anyone on who may be a part of a people team. And so if we think about the creation of opportunities or enabling dreamers to get into our organizations, it really starts with us because we set the practices, we set the organizational policies, we lead talent acquisition. So we're out in the trends, going to source for talent. And so be thoughtful, be intentional, make sure your teams are trained, make sure they understand the differences between DACA versus H-1B sponsorship, et cetera, and make sure that you're educating your managers that this is a really amazing talent pool. It isn't something to fear. We shouldn't be worried about, renewals, et cetera. Individuals who have DACA today are still going to be able to renew, et cetera. So I just really being intentional and creating spaces to increase that representation, including dreamers, is really important. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. Congressman?
Well, just thank you. Great to be with you all. Thank you for this important conversation. And since I am in Congress and in politics, I'll end with a plea for your help in pressing our elected officials in the federal government, in the House and in the Senate, to finally get immigration reform done through the budget reconciliation bills that are coming up. Please reach out if you can and urge them to do that.
Excellent. Thank you. Albert, we're turning it back to you.
Wow. Thank you so much, Eugene, Representative Castro, and Lisa. I'm actually going to quickly turn to our sponsors, Accenture, for a short video. Go ahead, take it away. Wow, that video just blew me away. Thank you so much, Accenture. Now we are actually going to our final session of the day, our startup showcase. I'm so pumped for this. We have 4 startups who are going to pitch to prestigious judges made up of successful entrepreneurs, investors, and industry leaders. One founder startup is actually going to walk away with $10,000 of BakerBot's legal services and one-on-one investment meetings with each one of our judges. Each startup is going to have 4 minutes startups to pitch, followed by a 2-minute Q&A with our judges. I'd like to actually introduce our 4 judges today who are going to be determining the winners of the showcase. I'd like to welcome up to the stage Natalie Gonzalez, the intellectual property partner at BakerBots. Hello, Natalie. How are you? Next, we have, so good to have you. Next, we have Bakary Brock, the Senior Director of Global Partnerships at Microsoft for Startups. Welcome up. Let's get him up here. There he is.
Thank you.
Nice to see you. And next, we have Juliana Garaziar, the Houston Launch Director of Greentown Labs. Oh, actually, Juliana is running a little behind, and she will be joining us here soon, so we'll get her up on stage as soon as she's here. And last but not least, we have Lisa Besserman of Expa VC. Hey, Lisa.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for having me.
Nice to have you. And let's get right to it, y'all. For our first pitch, we welcome Robert Balderas, founder and CEO of Bob's Container. Robert, we can see, let's see, there you are. Boom. What's up, brother? We can see you, we can hear you. Good luck to you. Remember, you got 4 minutes, and go ahead, take it away.
Awesome. Thanks, Albert. Hi, everyone. My name is Robert Balderas. You can call me Bob. And I am one of the founders and owner of Bob's Containers. And I'm going to jump right into it and tell you what we do. So Bob's Containers, deceptively simple what we do. We're taking big metal shipping containers and converting them into homes, offices, and a ton more. And I want to tell you more about the company and why we do it. So our sauce is e-com and giving people a modern experience to buy an additional dwelling unit, a short-term rental, a backyard apartment, something for the parents or the kids living on your property. You need more space. And why we do it is because this is a huge and sleepy industry. Think home building, but more modern, right? So this market is over 48 billion. It's highly fragmented, no national players, and it's primed for some organization and a little bit of disruption. So why containers? There's a long story behind that, how we got into it, but we saw an opportunity and we started by just selling empty shipping containers, commodity with the dash of e-com, and it worked out well. But then we saw a huge, even larger demand for using these for housing and housing projects. So all conservative estimates say that the global container house market is going to be over 73 billion in just a few years. I think everyone in this room knows in their city or nearby, the demand is huge and we're not keeping up with it. It takes new home construction an average of 7 months, while it takes us 4 weeks to build a shipping container home. So we're able to move fast and provide some awesome, very high-end solutions and target affordable housing. There's a bunch of different markets here. So as I mentioned earlier, the problem is pretty simple. Unmet demand for housing, and our solution here is using shipping containers. In this space, nobody's doing e-com. Nobody's giving you a modern experience. And if they are, they probably don't have the network that we now have on the supply side. So we have a land and expand model that's working very well. We're shipping all over the US, and people are discovering us nationally because e-com, our sales model is great. We have a competitive offering at a good price point, and we're able to move quickly and stay very lean. So a little bit more to company. We've sold a lot of things. We convert containers to a lot of cool things like bars and offices, but by far the largest revenue driver and the biggest opportunity is using these for housing. So we're doing that very well. We have competitors in the space. Like I said, it's very fragmented. I'm very proud to say that we are going and pushing the envelope and making the whole industry rise with us by doing what you expect on any Amazon experience. E-com checkouts, pricing transparency. You can do a consultative sales process and make your own dream home. So we're top of the field right now and growing pretty well because of it. So why should you care about what Bob's Containers does? Well, we're very honest with ourselves. We're not a tech company. We're a tech-enabled company. There's a huge opportunity here in generally is housing, and our niche specifically using containers and medium works very, very well. We know this because we have 6-month backlog of orders. We're shipping all over the US. Everything is inbound still, so there's a demand for this. We're getting some Netflix exposure this fall, and then year over year, our online presence is growing tremendously, over 1,000%, and social media is just insane. So the demand is there. It's time for someone to be a national player in it. So some quick things about unit economics, like we have a proven business model. We're got our cost of acquisition straight. We know we're very fortunate to be profitable and to, as we scale, maintain that profitability as we grow. So what's our roadmap look like? Why should you care? How does this become a billion-dollar company? Well, we are an operator, so we're gritty. We're down there. We're building these things ourselves right now. But we're at a fortunate position where now we can outsource some of the manufacturing, go fully into operating the marketplace, being the e-com provider, and then move into financing, which will increase sales and lower the barrier to having an awesome backyard container home or wherever you want to put them, and get into, I guess, more real estate prop tech space. So our goal, and we're on target for it this year, is 10 million in revenue, and we're thinking we'll hit 100 million by 2025 at the current pace. So it's going very, very well. We're very happy and fortunate. So how does this scale? Well, there's a lot of things you can do with containers. Like I mentioned before, we've done offices, we've done container bars, we've done all the cool stuff, but we have to focus on one market segment, and that's using them for homes. So our largest revenue driver now is people using them for short-term rentals, and that is super lucrative for someone who's a real estate developer or anyone who wants to just make money off their backyard. So we're really leaning into that, and how we're going to expand is now we're making these unstaffed
Oh, Bob, can you hear us? Oh no, looks like we lost Bob. Let's give it a second here. Let's see. All right. Oh no, did we lose Bob? Oh, there he is. He's back. He's back. 1 second. There you are. Bob, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can. Did I lose you guys for most of it?
Yes.
Oh,
all
no.
Good. I can hear you. Let's bring up the judges here for some questions. Sorry, we had some technical difficulties there, Bob. We lost you.
Oh, no. Okay.
Amazing. All right. All good. I know Natalie, Bakri, and Lisa, we obviously got cut off there, but please, let's start with any questions you may have. We'll start with you, Natalie.
Well, we didn't get to hear the very end, so I was just curious what the ask is. Are you looking for funding right now? Where are you in all of that?
So we're still bootstrapped. Like I said, we're gritty, but now we are opening a round. We want to raise up to 5 million. And so we're looking for investors or strategic partners or mentors. So we're very aware of what we don't know. And so where this becomes a $1 billion company is opening up sort of real estate developments using shipping containers. Think of like resort parks, or getting into financing. So that's what we're looking for, like a partner. It could be an investor who can come on and help lead us in that direction, because the market's there and we know like it's the opportunity is huge.
Amazing. Any other questions, Natalie?
No, I don't have any. Thank you.
No worries. Bakri, any questions?
Yeah, I noticed that you do have financing options, and Bob, you mentioned it just now. So, do you have any ties between your revenue and the financing piece? How does that work?
So we're using a third-party bank to finance our customers. It's limited, right? I would love if a firm or Afterpay we could qualify. Our products are too expensive, so we're going to develop our own. We've been piloting some in-house finance, which is great because that gives us monthly recurring revenue. But for now, we're staying very conservative while we figured it out, and we're using a third-party bank to offer financing.
Understood. So you have considered building your own facility?
Yes. We just don't know how. So we're looking for mentors in that kind of space.
Understood. Thank you.
Oof, I got chills for you, Bob. If you guys can make that happen, that's a good look. Lisa, any questions from you?
Yeah, I have a couple questions. So, this is pretty capital intensive in terms of labor, materials, et cetera. I was just curious as to what the margins look like per whether it's container home. Have you done those calculations?
Yeah, so we're able to maintain, it depends on the model, 40 to 50% net margins after we build. I mean, the markup on construction is pretty high. And you're right, it is capital intensive. And so what's happening towards the end of this year is that we're not scaling our manufacturing capacity anymore. We have the respect of the industry behemoths, people who have been modifying shipping containers for 20 years, mostly for oil and gas. But now they're wanting to take our orders if we come to them and say, here's an order for 100 Model A's. We're doing a development. So that keeps us very lean. But prior to that, yes, you're right. To expand, it was to add more capacity, which would require more human capital, bigger facility, things like that. But that said, we're still right at 40%, 50% margins net.
My next question is, the competitive landscape is pretty large in the container space, especially container homes. That's a pretty hot space. Two questions is one, what is your moat? What's setting you apart from your competitors? Sorry, there's a police driving. And then the second is your go-to-market strategy. How do you plan to achieve scale on a national or global level?
Yeah, so you're right. So it's a branding, it's a lot of marketing and branding that's pulling us apart. If you look at our content, we operate like a very sleek marketing company. Every shipping container, tons of videos and assets are made for that because it helps bring in more sales. But our e-com is our strength right now. Our sales process and e-com is strength. So we would have loved it if people would adopt making a $50,000 purchase online. That's not the case, right? The higher the ticket item, the more experiential. So our sales process is very lean and quick, but we quickly have them pull into a consultative sales process where they speak to a sales rep. They get that more touch. That's how we're going to have to scale with more sales reps to make the sale. So we find a high conversion rate that way. And then to your last question, our go-to-market strategy. So we're already in the market. We are shipping to California and other states, and we're seeing that, wow, even with the $5,000 to $10,000 shipping bill, people are still buying these cash. So we know that there's opportunity there. And so we're going to enter those markets more aggressively by making those unstaffed show models that I got cut off when I mentioned, where someone can step into one, it's parked outside of the Home Depot, talk to a sales rep on an iPad, and get that consultative sales process, but they get to see and feel and touch the space. Sorry, I'm in a container office right now. That's why I'm like looking around. But yeah, that's our plan.
Oh, that's incredible. Any other last thoughts, questions, Lisa? We're all good? Amazing. Thank you, Bob, so much for your pitch. Good luck to you. And thank you, judges, for your amazing questions. Let's go on to the next pitch. Next up, we have Fermin Morales, co-founder and COO of OnTouchGo. Fermin, we can see you. Can I see if we can hear you?
Yeah, check.
Amazing. We can hear you. Go ahead and take it away.
Appreciate it. Thank you. Okay. So let me see. Okay, there you go. So good afternoon, everyone. Today, I'm extremely proud and honored to be given the opportunity to represent our Latino community. I'm Fermin Morales from Matamoros, Tamaulipas, Mexico, co-founder at OnTouchGo. At OnTouchGo, we believe that targeting your ideal outdoor audience should be as easy as targeting them online. Currently, 96 cents on every ad dollar spent goes to other channels like online advertising. We have the data that proves audiences are more attentive to outdoor ads and are significantly more likely to convert at point of sale. A recent JC DeCal study actually showed that people only pay attention to online ads between 0.6 to 1.9 seconds on average. And this is the main reason we see a massive disruptive opportunity for us. I think we can all agree here that indeed time is money. Before COVID, 80% of consumers spent time outside of their homes every single day. And our platform facilitates and allows you to reach them while they're in transit. Today, we are exclusively a network of displays in rideshare vehicles. And when you're in one of our partners' vehicles, you will see a display showing 30-second interactive advertisements based on your trip activity. We grow our network by offering our partners a profit share, which is based on the volume of impressions and trips they incur over a month. So y'all may be wondering, why rideshare? Mobility is the medium between a consumer's home and their activities outside of home. More than ads, we have built intelligence around how each ad is displayed based on criteria like geofencing, time of day, demographics, and more. This in turn assists with store visitations, online conversions, and brand awareness. We made seeing your campaign in real time easy with an online ad manager where you can manage your account, launch a campaign, and view your metrics all within minutes. The future of our platform will allow you to reach audiences across all 5 of these in real life touch points like airports, mobility, streets, buildings, and TV. We're building proprietary algorithms and technologies that prove ROI in new, unique, and meaningful ways. That's why we believe we can reach market adoption at scale in ways that haven't been accomplished since the invention of Google and Facebook ads. Simply put, one advertiser will be able to reach you up to 5 times across 5 different displays in one sequence. Our advertisers include names you're familiar with, like Warner Bros., Hilton, Hyatt Regency, Evolution Hospitality, Greystar, FC Dallas, and over 100 plus pilot brands in the DFW. Our first MVP generated over $50,000 in revenue with just 25 displays. All this done without our newly developed online ad manager capabilities and just in the DFW market alone. Outdoor advertising is an $8.5 billion industry in the US alone, and the market specifically for targeting consumers within transit has grown nearly 12% year over year since 2017 on average. This is what our competitive landscape looks like today. There's numerous ad tech platforms and marketplaces that focus on agencies and major brands. But we're focused on that 60% of the industry that stems from local businesses that are largely ignored. We also see an opportunity to work with other networks within rideshare, taxi, and general outdoor companies that have billboards via API licensing. Our founding team consists of non-traditional cavaliers followed by a strong core of traditional and industry experienced advisors who are backed by the likes of Nielsen, Forbes 30 Under 30, Inc. 5000, and WPP alumni. And together, we are united in the belief that we can change the way advertisers view the outdoors. We made our platform scalable, and we have proven we can acquire customers of all sizes. We're looking for $1 million to scale to 2,000 displays and dominate the major markets in Texas. So ladies and gentlemen, who's ready to join and make the city your billboard? Gracias.
Nice job, Fermin. That's awesome. Let's get the judges up for some questions.
Juliana.
Hi, Fermin. How are you? Hi,
hello.
Welcome, I'm excited to be in front of y'all.
Thank you. Can you tell us a little bit more about your business model?
Yeah, absolutely. So currently, we're exclusively in the back of rideshare vehicles. Basically, obviously, it's more of an economies of scale, right? Currently, so we believe that as we grow larger, we'll be able to go into different mobility-based avenues, right? Whether it be subways, trains, other forms of in-vehicle transportation. But currently, we reach out to local businesses. We send emails. We've gone door to door. We bootstrapped originally, and we were really romanticizing our business from the start by going to all these local businesses. But I think as we grow and develop as a company, and I think from our advisors, right, and them giving us tips as well, and in the industry, we've gone to a model where we're reaching out to ad agencies now directly and trying to work with them as well. So we have a big driver in our economic value in terms of having that big brand, having that big agency to help us be able to scale and make us a much more scalable business. Aside from that, like I mentioned before, we pay the drivers $100 a month based off of obviously trip activity, impressions, and such. That's basically at the base of what we're doing right now.
Amazing. Any other questions, Juliana? For Fermin?
I have a question. How are you guys measuring success of the campaigns?
Absolutely, yeah. So basically, I think in advertising and marketing, one of the largest things is being able to have, obviously, the impressions. So our success comes in terms of being able to provide impressions to our client. And not just that, we have a very unique attention rate that is really unheard of in terms of advertising. We have approximately a 29-second attention rate as compared to, like I mentioned, to online advertisement, which is at like a 0.6, 1.9 seconds. So we see a huge dynamic and huge possibility on that end to be able to deliver that and educate our customers, not just at the local basis, but also on the national basis.
Incredible. Any other questions, Bakari?
Yeah, so you mentioned for me, and thanks for the pitch, that you have a higher retention rate compared to online. Is that across your sector, or is that with your technology specifically?
It's with our technology specifically, correct.
It's your creative?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
Yes, so creative, we actually outsource that, and I guess speaking onto a part of our business model. So we've contracted as partners several creative agencies that work here in the DFW market currently, and they do most of our creative for the businesses that we work with. However, through that online ad manager, we want to make it to where the businesses can go online and buy up to at least $100, right? That's all I was mentioning. It's really, I could see how it's in a perspective, right? It's really hard for local businesses to get local businesses to spend on any form of advertisement for that matter. But if you think about it, right, objectively, local businesses have been underrepresented. They haven't been allowed to buy into billboards. They haven't been allowed to be able to buy into these other mediums because they're worth $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 to get a static billboard that is mostly anecdotal, right? It's just a static paper board, and you really can't tell how many exactly people have seen it or the attention rate. I know they're adding a camera AI that can kind of give some of like a better view of like people that are looking up and whatnot, but it's still not accurate. It's not. I think the industry hasn't been pushed to try to do better in a while.
And sorry to interrupt, just for the sake of time, one last question.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I'm sorry. I get excited.
Yeah, I totally appreciate that and the energy. With Alfie's announcement a couple of days ago, how are you thinking about answering that?
With Alfie, so we're very aware of that. I think we do have some strategies in place. I know this is going to be, public, but we have things that are under our sleeve based on our business model that we're currently setting ourselves up in the market to where we'll be taken care of pretty well. I'll just say that, and I'd be happy to talk on another meeting with either of y'all and kind of give you more insight on what our strategy looks like moving forward.
Thank you.
Awesome. Judges firing off. Great questions. Natalie, any questions for Fermin?
Just one real quick one. You mentioned some of the competitors in the space. What's the biggest differentiator, would you say? I know you're focused on the local businesses, but is it the price point that's different? I mean, what is the big selling point?
I think that's where we're really disruptive, is how we're approaching our business model. And the main basis is that we offer right off the bat, we offer a $100 flat fee, which none of our other competitors are currently doing. Sometimes they don't get paid. I mean, I've gone into several of other competitors, ride shares, right? And they have like one of our competitor screens, and they want to switch out to us like immediately. So we've already set ourselves to our offering towards our rideshare partners to where it sets us apart. We're offering a flat fee, and sometimes they don't get paid from all these other partners. We've like I mentioned, we have some things under our sleeve that have really helped us kind of stay afloat on that end.
Amazing. Any other questions, Natalie?
I wish I could be more detailed on that end, guys. I really, really wish I could, but that's kind of like our bread and butter.
All good, Fermin. Well, if you win this competition, you're going to be able to sit one-on-one with all these folks.
If you guys are that curious, then you can ask me if I won.
Thank you so much for the pitch, Fermin. I really appreciate
Absolutely.
it. Our next pitch is presented by Ivan Huerta. He is the founder and CEO of Parabeac. Welcome, Ivan. Let's see.
Thank you so much.
Amazing.
Can you all hear me?
Yes, we can. We
Awesome.
can see you and hear you. Take it away.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Awesome. Well, I'm Ivan, CEO and co-founder of Parabeac. About a few years ago, I was running a dev shop, and during that time, we experienced one of the biggest problems in app development today. It's a problem that occurs between the design and development cycle, and in December 2019, decided to ditch that to try to solve this problem. And so the industry refers to this problem as handoff hell. It's a problem that occurs between the designers. You often hear designers complaining that the designs aren't implemented correctly. You often hear developers complaining that they need to be working on functionality and making sure it's bug-free. It's a really frustrating problem. But more importantly, it's a really expensive problem. Gartner actually did a study and found that 60% of app development is being spent on the front end today. And a huge chunk of that is caused because of this problem. And so to sort of visualize the process, designers usually create designs in Sketch or Figma. They hand this over via Slack or email, and then the developers basically just take these images that are given to them and try to implement it in code, and it just never gets done correctly. So what we wanted to do at Parabeac is take these design files, convert them into code, and directly integrate that into the developer workflow so that there is no longer the need for a handoff. And we'll dive more into this on exactly how we do this through our products. But before we started working on this, we tried out many of the tools out there. On the right, you have companies that are essentially design tools that were built to convert to code. But the problem that these companies have had is that designers don't want to use these tools. They want to keep using Sketch or Figma. And then on the left, you have companies that integrate with the existing design tools, but the ones that have been able to start generating code just have not been able to do it well because of a lack of focus. We know this because we were a paying customer of these companies. And so we're here differentiated today by integrating with existing design tools, but specifically focused on Flutter right now because it's a hot market that's growing extremely quickly. The way we win in the long term is by aggressively building community and building a plugin marketplace around what we're doing. So today we have an open source project called Parabeac Core, and developers can download this from GitHub today. They can stick in a Sketch or Figma file and spit out a Flutter project. And it's got some really unique features. But most importantly, we've been able to start building a community around what we're doing. We have over 700 community members globally. We have contributors who are contributing in many different ways, such as adding new capabilities to the open source project, as well as starting local community chapters, such as one in Nigeria. We've even found one of our earliest angel investors through our community. So we're really excited about our community. But they've also been able to help us learn and understand why the open source project doesn't solve the whole problem. While it's great for a standalone developer or designer, it's not a great tool for teams. And so that's where we created Parabeac Nest, our price product. And this is what allows designers to take every design change and turn that into a pull request. So designers can upload the designs, and then whenever they want to send it to the developer, they can do so via a pull request. We currently have 800 people on a waiting list for this product, and this launches on September 10th. This is the pricing model that we're going out with. We have a free tier so that teams can experience what this workflow feels like. They have a set number of computing credits, and then past that, they will go into a fixed tier of $99 a month, and then anything past that will be a custom tier. And we've got a great team. Myself and Ivan are young entrepreneurs and engineers, originally from El Paso, Texas, but here in Austin now. But we also have part-time seasoned executives, John Dupree and David Overton, who lead our marketing, admin, and finance. We have 5 other engineers in El Paso. We have 2 institutional investors, Beto Payadas and Taylor Clausen. Beto runs a large fund out of El Paso, and Taylor runs a pre-seed developer tool-focused fund. Currently raising $750K. This is going towards aggressively building community, as well as additional product development, begin building a plugin marketplace so we have defensibility, and then seeing our first revenue so that we can raise a real seed round towards the end of this year. We currently have $525K committed in this round. So that's Parabeac. Thank you so much.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Ivan. Appreciate it. Awesome. We were going to start with, let's start with you, Natalie. Any questions?
So Ivan, great pitch. Tell me a little bit about what sort of suite of documents you have to protect your code and what you're doing on the open source side, contributor license agreements, EULAs, all of that. Have you been working with a lawyer to do all of that for you?
Yeah, we do have an attorney that we work with, but the open source project is available for everybody to use, even if they wanted to use it commercially. We really have not thought about trying to protect that specific piece of code. We think the real way to protect this, and we've seen this in other companies such as WordPress, is by building a plugin marketplace, and because this is going to add value to Parabeac, and that's not replicatable. So.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you.
Awesome. Let's go over to you, Bakri. Any questions for Ivan?
Yeah, sure, Ivan. So it just seeing that pricing slide, how did you come up with that single price tier, and what does unlimited mean to you? Like how many seats?
Yeah, so we really wanted to tie getting value out of the product to our pricing, and so we thought that trying to do a usage-based model was the best way to do that. The problem is with startups that are just in a very specific stage. They don't want a usage-based model; they want a fixed cost, and so we have a fixed cost of $99 a month for those types of companies. Anything past that, though, it is strictly just going to be a usage-based model based off of how much they're using the product. So users and projects are really not necessarily a correlation. The amount of changes that they're doing through the platform is.
So you're basing on like workloads?
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Thank you.
Awesome. Going over to you, Lisa. Questions for Ivan?
Yep, 2 questions. One, I saw you had was 800 people on your waiting list. What was your strategy to get those people on the wait list?
Yep. So developers and designers have found us through primarily 3 ways. The first is we've been able to create a lot of content that we push out onto the Flutter subreddit community. As I can hear one of my headphones dying, so if I switch it to the speaker, I'm sorry. We've been able to develop content that we push onto different sites. We've developed some YouTube videos where people have been able to search for us, and people have also found us just by simply Googling open source design to Flutter. And lastly, we've done some experimentations with outbound and inbound, but our primary strategies are with content and and other things for designers specifically.
And my second question is, what was the decision to go with Flutter as opposed to like React Native?
Yeah, so when we were a dev shop, I was always skeptical of cross-platform frameworks. My background was in native iOS engineering, and when we first tried out Flutter, I was still skeptical. But when I went back to try native iOS, I realized three things. The first thing was it was extremely fast to build with. It was a lot easier than any other framework I had played with in the past. And we got really excited about its long-term potential for being a framework that not only works for mobile, but also desktop, web, and embedded systems. So that's why we placed a bet on Flutter long-term. And luckily, things have been going really, really well for Flutter.
Awesome. And Juliana, take us away. Questions for Ivan.
Sure. What is the use of funds for your raise?
Yeah, the use of funds are to continue aggressively building community. We think that's what is going to protect us, and as well as continue increasing the value of Parabeac. And in the long run, that's that's going to be very good for a profitable business. We also need to build out some additional product, including the plugin marketplace, so that there's actual defensibility. And then lastly, what was the last thing? Sorry. I forget what the last thing is, but yes. Just so that we can start seeing our first revenues, of course. So that's really important for us over these next couple months.
Excellent. Any last questions from the judges? All good? Excellent. Nice work, Ivan. Thank you so much. That was incredible. And now moving over to our last and final pitch of the day, we have Starling Medical. Let's welcome to the stage Dr. Alex R. Valos, CEO and President of Starling Medical. Alex, can you give us a mic check?
Hi, can you guys hear me okay?
Incredible. We see you and hear you. Go ahead and take it away.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Alex R. Valos. I'm the CEO of Starling Medical, where our mission is to revolutionize the management of the over 3 million people out there in the United States with neurogenic bladder dysfunctions. So we started on this journey years ago because this is a widespread problem experienced by one of our family members. So this here is Natalie. Natalie was born with cerebral palsy, but over the years, the most difficult aspect of managing her now is no longer her primary diagnosis of cerebral palsy. It's the neurogenic bladder that she's developed along the way. Because right now, in 2021, the standard of care for people like Natalie is for her to self-catheterize themselves 5 to 8 times a day, every 3 to 4 hours for the rest of their life. It's associated with severe reduction in quality of life, but what makes things worse is these people frequently get hospitalized for urinary tract infections linked to their catheterizations, and because of all the thousands of catheters that go through each year and all their hospitalizations, we spend about $30 billion a year in total in managing this patient population. So at Starling, our mission is to give these people a simpler, safer way to pee again on a day-to-day basis, but also to improve the healthcare economics surrounding them. And this is our solution. We call it the urine control system. It features this fully indwelling urinary pump prosthesis that now allows these people to pee safely and easily again at the push of a button. It's a monthly replace device, so they'll go from 150 plus insertions a month down to just 1. And we're designing it to be able to communicate with their smartphone to let them know how full their bladder is so they can know when they need to pee. And using our proprietary spectroscopy sensors, we're able to detect the early signs of these people's infections so we can treat them in the outpatient setting versus the expensive inpatient setting like we do now. And as a connected tech-enabled device, we'll generate monthly data reports on the bladder health of these patients directly to the urologist, which then will enable them to generate new passive revenue streams for the physicians who are prescribing the device. With our AI and tech-enabled platform, we're enabled to identify the urinary tract infections earlier so we can treat these patients again in the outpatient setting, which then brings significant cost savings to payers to the tune around $22,000 per patient per year on our platform. And our business model is pretty simple. We sell our device directly to patients for $400 a month, but then they get reimbursed under existing reimbursement codes. And so the patients aren't going to see any additional costs when switching to our therapy from their current catheters that they use. We'll pair it with our UTI software as a service that the physicians use to gain access to the data from our device, which we then use to pay them around the $100 a month, also reimbursed under existing codes. But because these devices and services need to be exchanged out monthly for the rest of the lives of these patients, each one represents significant lifetime value and revenues for the company. And our go-to-market vision, we'll first launch a point-of-care version of our device. It's a Class 1 version of our UTI sensing hardware and sensors that enable current catheter users and women with chronic urinary tract infections to be able to detect and predict them earlier. Before moving out into the urine control prosthesis market, launching our 510K device around 2023, tapping into a $15 billion serviceable addressable market before moving on to the larger worldwide $70 billion targeting neurogenic conditions, but also additional indications like people with BPH or stress urinary incontinence. We've had great traction to date. We've raised over $500,000 in non-dilutive funding. We won a host of business plan competitions and awards and have ongoing clinical studies with both Stanford University and the Houston VA. We're raising a $2 million seed now that'll get us to complete a prosthesis, get us to first-in-man studies of the device, as well as launching our point-of-care device along the top into early revenues before later doing a Series A and a Series B, enabling us to launch the full product. Our team has over 50 years of experience in bringing novel medical devices to the market. I myself am a three-time serial medical device entrepreneur. We came together to give these millions of pet people around the world a simpler, better way to pee again on a day-to-day basis so they don't have to catheterize themselves anymore, but it's also so we can improve the healthcare economics around them. We're really looking for people that can join us on a mission that together we can one day soon tell Natalie with Starling Medical, now you're in control of your bladder. Thank you, Dan. Thank you for listening to the presentation and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Alex. Let's bring up the judges for some questions. Awesome. Let's start with you, Natalie. Any questions for Dr. Alex Arbelos?
Hi, Alex. Just real quick, 20 seconds. Give me the 20 seconds on your IP protection, please.
Yeah. So the company owns out our IP. We have a full utility patent that's provisional at this point, a full utility patent on the core aspects of this technology, namely how we detect these urinary tract infections and the details of how a device works and how we do our pumping mechanism. And we have a second family that covers this particular point of care version of our device.
Awesome. Questions?
Alex, so can you tell us a little bit more about your exit strategy? Do you have a different exit strategy for your point of care version than the other version?
So we foresee a lot. So the exit version is still going to be largely driven by the prosthesis because the prosthesis is essentially a 15 billion opportunity. The point of care device allows us to generate early revenues, but the other side benefit of it is as people utilize that device, it allows us to gain access to their data from utilizing the device that we can then feed back into the AI system that allows us to better improve the prosthesis, which is the huge value opportunity. We are expecting to use a direct go-to-market strategy targeting private practice urologists, where based on how these patients conglomerate to these specialists, with only about 6 to 10 of these groups, we'll have access to around 20,000 patients, but at our reoccurring price point, it's around $100 million in annually recurring revenue that we think we could then exit to a group like Boston Scientific or Medtronic for over $1 billion, given the recent multiples in the space.
Lisa?
Well, my question was around go-to-market, and he answered that. So your primary strategy is to go towards go after the urologist rather than the users. Is that correct?
So the most efficient way is to go through the urologist because the urologist has to prescribe the device in order for a patient to be eligible. It's not something they can just go to Walmart and buy off the shelf. That being said, there's a huge, every time we've talked to a patient about this, the first thing they ask is, when can I get this? So we think there's going to be a huge swell of patients going to their urologist saying, I saw this thing, I want it, is there a way that I can get put onto it? So we do think that element is going to be there, but we do think the main stopgap in the procedure is going to be getting the urologist on board to prescribe it. It's part of the reason why we're utilizing the telehealth aspect to provide them new revenues. So not only can they provide better care for their patients, their practice will make significantly more money than the current options that they currently use.
Awesome. Looks like we're all good on questions. Thank you so much. Bakari, do you have a question?
Oh, I was just going to ask, did you call me before? It doesn't matter, but I was going to ask about the intersection of this target market and the elder and aging market as well.
So with our first product, the majority of them are Medicare patients, so elderly. A huge number of elderly patients have some form of bladder dysfunction. And so they're not necessarily our first target of neurological-based bladder dysfunctions. But with our future indications that we're looking to target, we're essentially solving the fundamental issues with all urinary catheters that we use currently. So we see future versions of the device being able to target the elderly and bladder dysfunction populations as a whole, but we'll probably exit as a massive exit, and Medtronic will probably be the one that brings that device forward.
Thank you.
Incredible. Nice work. Alex, thank you, judges. We're going to send you over to the deliberation room where you guys will take the next 10 minutes to decide on the winners. Thank you to all the founders who pitched today. Good luck to you. I wish you all the best. And in the meantime, let's go ahead and hear from Roman Gonzalez. And stay tuned for the winner, y'all.
Hey, my name is Roman Gonzalez. I'm the founder and CEO of Gardenio, a new kind of garden club membership for new food growers. But today I'm coming at you as the co-founder of LatinX, which is an effort to unite and advance the LatinX startup system in Texas for founders and for funders. Before I get to exactly how we're going to do that, I want to talk to you about why. Right? We know that less than 3% of funding from venture capital goes to Black and brown founders. Right? It's really, really bad, unconscionably bad. However, there are seed funds emerging, like you're going to hear from Harlem Capital, right? Tons of new funds at the seed stage, and they're very exciting, particularly within technology. But the issue is that most of our companies aren't able to get to that point of traction because they're not able to raise those earlier pre-seed and friends and family rounds. We know that friends and family round is kind of a myth, right? I can't exactly call my abuela up for $20, right? It could bankrupt her, and that's not good. And so what happens is we enter these conversations with venture capitalists and we get being told, we're too early, right? Come back later. And so we just kind of spin our wheels until, unfortunately, many companies just spin out. And I don't like that, and I feel like you might not either. The idea is that friends and family rounds are built not just from friends and family, but from trusted relationships, right? Early checks are written to people we know, we like, and we trust. So LatinX was formed to foster those bonds, right? How do we do that? Every other month, we throw a happy hour to bring these folks together, LatinX founders and the people who want to fund them, with a highlight on LatinX funders, to be able to hang out, have some mezcal, get to know each other, have some pitches, and really start to build those bonds of trust. Secondly, we're developing a digital platform for these folks to be able to connect. And for us to actually intelligently match them for more meaningful, relevant, and productive relationships, right? And because you asked, when we say LatinX, we are painting a very large brush with that, right? Lots of folks don't even know how to talk about the Latinx community. But the fact is it contains the indigenous experience, the white experience, the Black experience, Asian experience, the queer experience. All of that is valid in the Latinx world. So if you identify as Latinx yourself, as a founder, or if you're somebody who wants to fund those companies, you can go to LatinTX.com. You can sign up as a founder. You can sign up as a funder. We're getting finer grained data than we've ever had on Latinx founders and funders, and really start and launch this incredible community of folks all trying to unite and advance the Latinx startup system in Central Texas. And if you want to get involved in the committee itself, email artroman@latintx.com. Adios.
Incredible. Welcome back, y'all. Thank you, Roman, for that amazing insert. And really excited for what you and your team is doing here with the LatinX. And obviously that last video, I'm very proud to say that we created here at Blended Sense. And as our judges continue their deliberation and let us know who the winners are for today, I'd love to take a moment here and just tell you a little bit about myself and Blended Sense. I've been so honored to be here with y'all today. And really, the only reason I'm able to be here today is because I have an incredible team running our company that continues to grow. Blended Sense is a media technology company. Not only am I a LatinX founder, but my co-founders are women and Latinx as well. So we're very proud about that. Our team is extremely diverse, and we will continue that trend and take action as we've been all talking about that today. Really, I'm just so proud of the community showing up and being present and having these conversations and moving the needle around the idea of change. And I think if you are here today and you've been a part of this event today, I hope you have felt inspired and that you leave here inspired to go be a part of that change. Until then, I will see you, and I cannot wait to figure out who won. I'm waiting for the notes here. We don't know yet, but we will know very soon. So stay tuned, and I will be right back with you. Hello, welcome back. We got a new guest on stage. This is Oliver Francis. He came to join us for the end of this and announce the winner. Wish you could talk so you can let them know. But we have found the winner, and I'm so excited to announce that Ivan from Parabeac. Congratulations, Ivan. You have been awarded $10,000 in legal fee credits from our sponsor, BakerBots, and investment meetings with each of our judges. Thank you all who participated. You are the future of Latinx innovation in technology. Congratulations, Ivan and the Parabeac team. Thank you to our speakers and our attendees for tuning into this event. And another big thanks to our sponsor, Accenture, for making this summit possible. Capital Factory is proud to be a part of the Latinx entrepreneur ecosystem. If you'd like to keep in touch with the DEI community fostered by Capital Factory, join our LinkedIn group, which you can find in the chat. Let's check the chat out. And follow us on Twitter at CF Diversity. And if you'd like to keep in touch with me, you can find me at Blended Sense across all social media. If you'd like to connect with me directly, it's albert@blendedsense.com. We're also, actually, if you're here in Austin, Texas, we're having an in-person Latinx happy hour at Wanderlust Wine Company at 4:30 p.m. We will be there. You coming with? Yeah, you are. We will be there. So if you're in Austin, please come out and join. The energy has been incredible. I can't wait to meet every single one of y'all. Lastly, folks, be sure to check out your email momentarily for a post-event survey. Please fill that out. Your feedback is so important so that we can make our events better and better each time. And in the words of Walter Mercado, I'm going to transfer you over to this side. Que vayan con mucha paz, pero sobre todo, mucho, mucho, mucho amor. Thank you so much. My name's Albert Baez. It has been an absolute honor to be your MC today. Have a wonderful day.